Hey everyone, this is the cup that we're going to be working on today. I had a couple of issues with it, but I hope that you like it and I'll show you what I did to correct it. So the first thing that we need to do is prep our tumbler by sanding and rubbing it down with 91% rubbing alcohol, and then I spray painted it black. This is the vinyl that we're going to be using. I got this from Littleleeandrose, and it came in a bundle deal with some glitters and some other vinyls. This is a live mix number 130, and I'm sorry, at the time of filming this, it's already sold out, but it's kind of a blue black with holographic colors in it. And this is Shea, it's more of a copper tone. And then we have Troy, and these were the basic colors I was going with. We were going to, this is also UV resin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this UV resin all over this tumbler and use this as our base epoxy. And I'm just going to get a good coat of this all over this tumbler. I do a fairly thin layer of this UV resin all the way around the tumbler. And then we are going to go in with our first color, Troy. I decided to do like a diagonal strip, and I'm going to do this a couple of inches wide. It doesn't have to be perfect the way that you put it on, and I'm not putting this down to where I have to chase it, which means having the tumbler on or having your turner on. So we're just going to turn it on as we need to move these stripes a little. So you see I turn it on and I put my glitter down, or I turn it on, let it spin to where I need it to be, and then I put my glitter down. And then once it's looking the way that I want it, I'll turn it on again, let it rotate to get to a different position. This is our color Shea that we're going in with. And we're just going to do this like we did with the Troy. We're just going to lay it down in a diagonal strip on that UV resin. And you see that I've got this spinning. This is about the only time I did chase that glitter. But we just want to get, I like thick chunks. So that's why we're going a little wide on this. So you see here, we're just going in with that Shea and putting it in a diagonal. And this is our live mix number 130. This was a beautiful glitter. It's blues and blacks, and it's got some holographics in it. Now with the width I did these, I needed a fourth color. So the fourth color we went in with was a kind of like a live mix, and it was called Save the Horses. But you'll be able to see what that looks like in just a minute. This is Save the Horses. Now once we get that on, we're going to let that spin. And I went in with a coat of UV resin over all of this. And then cured that UV resin. What I forgot to mention is once I got all of this glitter down, I used my UV light and cured that UV resin and then went over it again with UV resin to set it on the top. And this is just me putting it on the bottom. Now the vinyl that we're using on this, I did scan it into my computer so that whenever I cut the design out, I could see what it looked like on the design itself before cutting it, and then realizing I didn't like the design. So if you have a scanner, that would be something I would do, especially if you're not used to cutting different designs out for like a peekaboo or something like that. So I chose to scan the design in, and then I pulled up my design that I wanted to use to cut out on this vinyl. And where I messed up here is I did not set the this template to the same size of what my vinyl was. So it cut off the design just a little bit. You can see that white area behind the design. And once I got the design done the way I wanted it, then I came in and put another diamond shape in the center. And I resized it, and I'm doing an offset on it. And with the offset, we're going to like a 0.97, so that it would be approximately the same size as the cutouts on this template that you see on the right. I don't know if you can see it in the background, but while I had my template on the top of this, I went ahead and sliced the template out of the vinyl that I'm using. Now that we have got our diamond here in the center of our design, and we make sure that it is centered, then we're going to go in and create our offset. You see I start to pull that main diamond off, and I realized I needed it to remain there. So what I did on my side panel is I highlighted the main design and the offset, recentered them, and then I selected both of them and did a slice. So this is what our design will look like being cut out on the vinyl that we are using on our cup. And once it looks good, then we are going to go ahead and we are going to cut our design out. And whenever you remove it from your mat, I'm using a Cricut. Whenever you remove it from your mat, turn the design down and then peel the mat away from the design. That way you don't get any buckling on your vinyl that you're using. This is a pen that I have, so it's got a really thin, almost like a needle on the end of it that helps you pull up your small, delicate vinyl pieces. And we're just going to pull that excess off of our design here. And then we're going to go in and start removing those cross hatches that we cut into the vinyl. You may notice that I'm talking a little off from what I usually do. I've been dealing with a migraine now for 3 days, and we've been having storms come through, so that doesn't help with the migraines. So here we are, we're removing the cross hatches that was cut into our vinyl here. And we're just going to gently remove all of them. And there's a couple of places that it didn't cut all the way through. So that's why I'm having a little issue. And I'm being really careful not to pull up the bigger part of the designs as I'm removing these lines. So once we've got our design cut, we're going to go ahead and cut out our transfer tape. And this is where I had another issue. I've got some transfer tape that holds great and has perfect contact where I do not have issues, and then I have sometimes I use the same transfer tape and I have a lot of issues with it. So I haven't found the perfect for me. Now I know where my error was on this one, and it was because in placing the transfer tape, I used too much pressure. But then again, at the end, part of my design didn't want to release. And then the parts that did release had flaws in the design. But here we are putting our transfer tape down on this vinyl. And I used a lot of pressure on front and back. So that's where my issue was. And then whenever I started to remove my vinyl, or remove the backing from my vinyl, you'll be able to see where some of that backing stayed on to the transfer tape. And it's mostly right around the center. You can see where the lines are, and then there's white in the middle of those lines. So what I did is I used my pen. Right there you can see where the backing stuck on it. So what I did is I used my pen and just went in and removed all that white by scraping it off. And that's what I'm doing here. Now once all that is removed, all that white area is removed, we're going to go in and we are going to start adhering this to our tumbler. And I use a piece of, I want to say it's like wax paper, that I use just to separate this from the tumblers so that it wouldn't stick before I made sure that it was going to go on correctly. So I'm just lining it up on the top and the bottom and make sure it lines up, because this is supposed to be kind of like a seamless design. And once you check it and it looks good, then we can start applying it to our tumbler. Now that glitter that we did earlier, you'll be able to see through the lines that was cut on this tumbler, or on this vinyl, I'm sorry. We're just going to make sure this is adhered good, and we're going to remove that transfer tape. And this is where I have issues, because I used so much pressure in trying to get this to stick because it wasn't wanting to stick with just light pressure. But then whenever I used too much pressure, it starts to pull up the design that is on here. But we fixed that in a little bit. So I'm going to remove the transfer tape here. And once we get that removed, I did not record it, but we're going to go ahead and put a coat of epoxy on it. You can see here, trying to get that vinyl to release off of that transfer tape. Once we get that vinyl, this transfer tape off, I'm going to go ahead and do one to two coats of epoxy, and we're going to lightly sand it. And then we're going to go into fixing the issues that removing this tape caused. So you can see these lines right here. And I just went through it and I found some stickers that I really liked that kind of had the same colors as what was in this vinyl. So we're just going to use these stickers and some instant transfers and cover up the oops that is on this cup. So there was a big area right there where the wings covered it up perfectly. And this kind of reminds me of kind of like a bird of paradise, flowers and feathers, the way that it's kind of got that wispy look to it. So here we have another area that we're just taking a flower and we are going to put this instant transfer over that area. And also with using this instant transfer, we're kind of hiding hiding that seal or that seam in a way. So we're just going to place some instant transfers around this tumbler in the areas that had oopsies from where the transfer tape pulled up some of the color off of the vinyl. I'm looking around to see if there's any more areas that is really bad. And here we're using a bigger portion of an instant transfer because there's another pretty good line on here, and we're just going to use that to cover up the area. Instant transfers is really nice, especially if you've done a cup and once you've completed it, you decide there's something a little extra that you want to add to it. Because the instant transfer, you can, once you put it on, you do not have to epoxy over it. That can be your last and final thing that you decide to do to your tumbler. Where with me, I use some of the instant transfers as a cover up, but I also like to put my instant transfer under epoxy. That way I know that it's sealed and I know that it's not going to come off. If I do an instant transfer on the last step, I put just a very, very thin coat of epoxy over the top of it. And once you got your instant transfers on, if you've never worked with it before, you'll place your instant transfer down and then you'll start to rub it, and you can see that the design starts to release from that top piece of film. And that's what's happening here, as I've done rubbed it down and released it from that film. Once we've got all our instant transfers on, here is where we're going over it with our epoxy. And on a general basis, I like to use 1 milliliter of epoxy per ounce of cup. So this is a 20-ounce cup. I'm going to use 20 milliliters. And I'm actually going to do 2 coats on this tumbler. So I'm using the Amazing Quick Coat that I get from Walmart. You can find it at other places as well. But I have a Walmart really close to me, like within 10 minutes. And all my hobby stores is 20 to 30 minutes away. So I'll just go to Walmart and pick that up with my other items that I need for the house. So we're just going to do, with the Amazing Quick Coat at 75 degrees, you can do another coat in 4 to 5 hours. It only takes about 4 to 5 hours to become tack free at 75 degrees. And you have a 20 to 30 minute work time with it. This is a 1-to-1 ratio per volume. So if you're doing 20 milliliters, you'll do 10 milliliters of part A and 10 milliliters of part B and stir for 3 to 5 minutes. I generally stir fast, so I have an issue with micro bubbles. The slower you stir your epoxy, the less micro bubbles you'll have. But also, once you get it stirred, you can let it sit for about 5 minutes and it will release a lot of those micro bubbles. And then whenever you torch it, that'll release a lot of micro bubbles. So once we get this epoxy on, you see I'm pulling from the bottom to the top. That way, whenever I'm removing my finger from around the top rim, then you do not have that epoxy dropping into your cup. So it causes less work in the long run of having to try to get that epoxy out of the center of your cup. Once everything is looking good, you're going to torch your cup. And I generally torch my cup for 2 revolutions. We're going to let this cure for about 4 to 5 hours, and then we will turn off our turner here, and then we'll let it sit for another 48 to 72 hours to let it fully cure. And this is going to be the result of our cup. I hope y'all enjoy this. I hope you like and consider subscribing for future videos. The next video we are going to be doing hopefully will come out in the next week to 2 weeks. Until then, keep crafting.